I spent 4 years learning French at school to only move to the United States and never really use it. While I didn't have a lot of opportunities to work with French or to speak it, I still did not lose my skill. I still can speak and understand the language. And this video is all about how I did not lose the language skills. And if you're someone in a similar position, you're afraid to forget a language that you once put so much effort in, this video is going to be for you. But also, I will share pretty common tips that are going to be useful to those who are just learning a language. But before we get started, like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. The first thing I want to say, I don't think it is possible to completely forget a language. At least it is not something that happens quickly. Yes, if you don't really use it, if you're not exposed to it, it's gonna be harder and harder to remember words, and especially when you're not listening or reading, but when you're trying to use them. So your mini vocabulary goes into your passive vocabulary from your active vocabulary, and it becomes harder and harder. But I think it is always easier to refresh rather than learn something from scratch. That's the first thing I want to say, because I was very frustrated and nervous about forgetting French when I came to the United States and I realized that I was not going to use French as I expected it to be in my life. So first thing first, don't get too nervous. It is hard to forget a language, and it's always easier to refresh and recap than to learn something from scratch if you ever need it again on a very advanced level. And the second thing, I think that learning a language is a lifestyle choice. Well, unless you just want to pass an exam and you're learning for an exam, but probably you're not, well, you wouldn't be watching me right now, so let's put that option aside. I think learning a language is a lifestyle choice, and to me the best way to learn a language, to have an advanced level or not to forget it, is to incorporate the language, your target language, into your daily life, which means getting lots of small and not so small habits, not only having classes but also doing a lot of other small things that I am going to share in this video. But the thing is, no one can really tell you what habits you should have, and I don't think that some habits are better or they are more effective than others. I think it is all about figuring out on your own, and you can do so by getting inspired by other people and other people's stories and things that worked for them, and to trying out different things. And this video, it is not an intention to say what's right for everyone. It's more of inspiration and some ideas for actions, things that you can try and see if they work for you or no. And now let's discuss the things that helped me and might be helpful to you if you're trying not to lose your language skills. I think the first and the biggest thing that had a major impact on me staying in touch with French was listening to the French radio every morning. So I am a breakfast person. I like to have a normal breakfast, something like oatmeal porridge or maybe an avocado toast and banana toast, and cooking all of it takes usually like 10-15 minutes. And I also like to, unfortunately or not, I like to do a couple of things at the same time, and I like to listen to something when I make my breakfast. So I listen to the French radio. That's my default, and sometimes it doesn't even feel right when I don't do this. And it is also something easy to do. So I just need to open my Radio France application on my phone and put on one of the radio stations listed in that application, and that's it. I picked up this habit when I was studying at school. Our phonetics professor recommended to listen to the French radio and to be exposed to the language every day to improve our intonation and overall our pronunciation. But it doesn't only help with pronunciation, it's something that helped me to stay in touch with the language till today. Next thing is watching news in French when I have my breakfast. So it feels like I'm sharing my morning routine with you, but yes, my morning routine is quite French. It is not an ad of any sort, but I like to watch Hugo Decrypt on YouTube, and he's got really sweet and short videos with all the news and important things that are happening in the world. And what's also nice is that first I kind of hear similar things on the radio, and then I watch it once again. Sometimes it's repetition of the same vocabulary, which is nice. After breakfast, I start working almost immediately. I am fortunately enough to be working completely remotely, and I spend most of my time here at this desk doing something on my computer, because I do software development, and sometimes I do like to code with music. Quite often it is no lyrics music, like focus playlist on YouTube or work playlist on YouTube, but sometimes I do like to listen to the French songs. I love French music. That's because I love French pronunciation so much, and I have a special playlist only with French songs, but also actually I have a lot of French songs in my liked playlist on YouTube, so I get to hear them quite often. That's a little thing, but that's something that helps me to get exposed to the French language and not to forget it completely. And after sitting almost 8 hours here at this desk, you can imagine how my back feels. And that's why I like to do yoga, and I've recently switched to doing yoga with French instructions. Yes, you know, the vocabulary related to different body parts is not exactly what I guess I need in French right now. But again, it's all about the exposure. So now I'm also doing yoga with French instructions. And now I want to emphasize something. Notice how everything I do with French is somehow connected to my hobbies, interests, and my life. So I'm doing yoga anyways. Why not do it in French? Or I'm cooking my breakfast and I like to listen to something, and why not listen to the French radio instead of listening to some music, for instance? Why not then putting on French songs? So I hope you get what I mean. It is not about doing things to purely learn a language, even though it is great, but if you cannot have it, you can always incorporate, find small habits that are easily incorporated into your life. Next up, listening to the French podcasts when I walk my dog or when I do household chores. I have an all-time favorite here. It's podcast Précepteur, which is a podcast about philosophy, and I absolutely love it. There are so many podcasts and there are so many options there that it might be even more interesting than listening to the radio. I like to use Castro application because it's easy to search for podcasts from different countries there. I just go to the settings and you set French is your main country of search, and then in discovery section there are so many podcasts in different categories that you can listen to. I think if you are a beginner or you have a middle level, you can just Google French podcasts and you'll see lots of recommendations with more like learning podcasts, so they will have kind of lessons and easier vocabulary, and they might be speaking slower. But if you are an advanced student, you can enjoy the whole variety of French speaking podcasts about anything and everything: history, politics, art, technology, philosophy, and all that kind of stuff. Most of the things that I just shared are about being exposed to the language, and finally the next thing is more about using the language, because there's difference between listening and reading and speaking or writing. And one of the things that I like to do to practice French is to take conversational lessons with native teachers, which is so simple to do these days. You can go on websites like italki, or I think there are even more websites like this one. It's not an ad, again, it's something I personally use, and find so many teachers that are not as expensive to speak French with you. I just started taking conversational lessons, so I used to take them, then I had large break because I was switching jobs and I needed more time, and now I still feel busy because I have a puppy, I have a full-time job, and I'm also doing this, recording these videos, so I don't really have much time. But I decided that I'm gonna invest at least 30 minutes of my time each week to practice speaking French. And learning new vocabulary. This is something you can do on a weekly basis, or you can even have one lesson per month, like 1 hour of speaking French or any other language that you're learning per month. And this is not going to be expensive, and this is not going to take lots of your time. Occasionally talking to friends and colleagues who speak your target language might be something useful. I do have a couple of friends who text me in French, and also I have 2 colleagues who speak French, and I got the chance to have French lunch with them when we only spoke French. It is definitely something not consistent. It hasn't been consistent in my life, but it's just another point of contact with French, or the French language and French culture. But now that I'm thinking about it, you can actually create some kind of group of friends or colleagues and have something more consistent, maybe having something like French lunch, even if it's virtual. If there's no opportunity for you to meet in real life those people, that might be something useful and also quite easy to do, because it doesn't really require any money to invest. You just need to know someone who speaks French or any other language that you're learning. This video is not French specific. As a software developer, I need to learn things on the go and to read a lot of documentation. And sometimes I see that some documentation pages have translations to other languages, French included. And I don't do this often, but sometimes I do like to check out the French page after I read that documentation in English. I don't really know a lot of tech-related vocabulary in French, because initially I started learning it in English, but it is nice and refreshing to spend a couple of minutes just going through the article and finding all those keywords in French that I know in English. And if you're also learning something on the job, and if you often read some articles related to your career, it might be a good idea to occasionally include some articles in your target language that you're trying not to forget. Okay, enough with work. After I finish my work, I like to watch TV series. That's one of the things I do, and I'm a big TV series person. And well, if you're somewhat like me, you might benefit from watching TV series and movies in your target language. Honestly, this is something that hasn't worked out quite well for me, because I have an issue here. I like to watch TV series in the original format. I like to hear the original voices of the actors, and I don't like to hear the translation. And most of the TV series that I want to watch happen to be in English. So I don't like to use the French audio for them, and I just watch them in English. But another option for those people like me is to watch original content on Netflix. There are many TV series, Spanish TV series, French, also German on Netflix you can watch. And if you want to know my list of French TV series on Netflix, it will be in the description. If you're fine with not watching the original, you can go to the Netflix settings and set your account to your target language, and then the whole interface is going to be in your target language. And also, I think it will suggest to switch the audio and subtitles to your target language. And while I watch TV series or movies in English or in French, what I like to do is write down interesting phrases and words. And especially, I like to write down phrases that I kind of already knew and I understood them, but I know that this phrase is not in my active vocabulary. This is not something I would remember if I was speaking or trying to write something. That's what I like to do. I get the list of those new phrases, mostly phrases, because I think it is more useful to know the context instead of just writing down a word that can have multiple definitions in different sentences. And I also like to put them into Quizlet application or something similar to create those flashcards and to practice those words when I have free time. I know this is kind of nerdy. Not everyone wants to write down new sentences, new phrases when they watch a TV series, but this is kind of my excuse for watching so many TV series. So if you like TV series and you sometimes feel bad about being unproductive, you can just use my technique of writing down words and saying, oh, I'm just learning. I'm just learning English or French or any other language. If you're still here, like this video and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate your help and support. And another thing that I like to do in my free time is reading, and especially before I go to sleep, because it's something that helps me wind down. And honestly, I am not a big French reader. I don't know what's up with me and reading in French, but I don't like it. I don't really read in French. I did buy a book, one book in French that I have in my new apartment. I'm almost done with this. C'est Le Robot qui rêvait, Robot Dreams. It was fine. I like the book, but I don't know, I am so used to reading in English, and actually reading was something I did intentionally to learn English. So switching to reading fully in your target language can be something helpful if you already have an advanced level, if you're learning or trying not to forget. If you're not as advanced and you don't feel comfortable reading a book and you're afraid you're not gonna understand the content, and that's the main point of your reading, then probably buying some like language learning books, like, you know, books with short stories and sometimes with vocabulary in the book. Sometimes they have kind of a separate section in a bookstore, and each book is marked with the ideal level for that specific book and vocabulary. It might be an option to keep up your skills, but also another thing you can do is to actually buy your favorite book in your target language. And that's exactly what I did with French at the beginning. So I like Harry Potter, and I bought the first book of the series way back in the day when I was learning French. And my goal was something like read and translate one chapter per a week, I think, or a day. So the thing was that I already knew the plot, I was familiar with every character and event, and I could fully concentrate on the language. So that's also something I think it is both helpful if you're just learning or if you're trying not to forget the language that you already know on some level. But I'm still trying to incorporate more reading into my life. But another problem that I have with reading, I don't like to read purely for the language. I like to pick a book for the ideas and content of that book instead of just picking anything so I can read in French. I guess that's the main problem with me not reading French books, but recently I have found a couple of French books that originally were written in French that I want to read, and maybe French reading is gonna be back into my life pretty soon. If you do try to incorporate more reading, I think it is important for your books to be accessible. And what I mean by that, if you want to read before you go to sleep, have your books by your side on your bedside table. That's something I do, and instead of checking my Twitter or Instagram when I go to bed, I unintentionally just take the book or my Kindle that I have on my table. I am so tired of talking and hearing my voice, which makes me think that I probably shared enough. And this is definitely great if you can have language lessons with a teacher, you know, keep learning new vocabulary and keep in touch with the culture. But if you cannot prioritize this, it's fine. There are so many things you could be doing to lose your language skills or to improve your language skills, like the things that I shared, and hopefully all of it will get you inspired and will motivate you to try out new things. But also there are more. You can be journaling in your target language, writing to-do lists, writing shopping lists, or even Googling. When you have some questions and you want to ask Google, you can use your target language to type it and read the answers. This is also something I did not with French, but mostly with English. Once I moved to the United States, it was quite useful to get this daily vocabulary by just writing to-dos or shopping lists or Googling. And the last thing I'm gonna tell you is that when you start doing some of those things, it might feel like something difficult. For instance, when I first switched to reading only in English, it was a little bit hard and, well, it slowed me down. And at some point I thought that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I can be more productive reading in Russian. But that was just a temporary issue. Yes, sometimes I am slower when reading in English because I want to write down some words or I want to highlight something specifically, like in English, some phrases or sentences I want to remember. But overall, my speed increased, and now I don't get so many headaches when I read in English. The same goes for listening to French podcasts. Now that I'm used to it, it's something easy for me to do. I don't have the friction, but at the beginning it wasn't this way. So if you do decide to try something to figure out if it works for you or not, also try to be a little bit consistent with it and do try to incorporate it into your life. Sometimes it doesn't work from the first attempt, but if you are a little bit more patient and giving it enough time, it can work out for you perfectly. Okay guys, that's it for today. Again, like this video if you liked it and want more content like this, and subscribe to my channel for more. And I'll see you in my next one. Thank you guys. Bye.